Hello, everyone. Welcome to this special event, APSC, nearly half a century of white solidarity with Black power. My name is Brendan. I am a member of the African People's Solidarity Committee under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. And I'm also the chair of the St. Louis branch of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, which is APSC's mass organization. I want to start off by saluting our leadership, Chairman Omali Yeshitela and Deputy Chair Onizine Yeshitela. And I also want to salute my leadership in the Solidarity Committee, APSC Chairwoman Penny Hess. Before we get started, if you are tuning in on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe to get alerts whenever we go live or post a new video. If you are tuning in on Facebook, please share this live stream with friends and let us know in the comments where you are tuning in from. We'll have a Q&A later in the program, so take notes and enter your questions or comments in the comments section on YouTube or Facebook, or in the Q&A feature for everybody joining us on Zoom tonight. Finally, I do want to say to close today's program, we will hear from APSC member Sandra Forrest, about next week's oral arguments in Black Power 96 Radio's federal lawsuit against the Pinellas County Commission for defunding the station in violation of the Black community's First Amendment rights and protections against racial discrimination. Also in today's event, we will be discussing the history and the significance of the African People's Socialist Party forming the African People's Solidarity Committee, a front of the African Revolution in the white community, which was founded 49 years ago this month. We'll be talking about the work of the Solidarity Movement over those years and the work we are engaged in today, organizing white people's reparations to the African liberation struggle and opening up a way for the white community to support the dual and contending power programs led by the Uhuru movement. I want to let everyone know that this event is a fundraiser for the Uhuru Solidarity Center, which is the national headquarters of the Solidarity Movement. It is an incredibly beautiful organizing center located right here in the south side of St. Louis with the banner outside that reads "Unity Through Reparations." This building is owned by the party's Black Star Industries, and we have a goal tonight to raise at least $500. So please go to apscuhuru.org/donate to make a contribution. And I'm sure our chat moderators will be putting that in the chat to make it nice and easy for you. So as I said, I am a member of the African People's Solidarity Committee, and the African People's Socialist Party formed APSC in 1976 with the mandate to organize other white people to build the movement of reparations and genuine solidarity with the liberation of African people. So I want to, without further ado, I want to start welcoming our special guest tonight. So here with me right now is Chairwoman Penny Hess, so leader of the African People's Solidarity Committee. Chairwoman Penny was present when the African People's Socialist Party held the founding conference of the Solidarity Committee in the fall of 1976 and has been a cadre member of the African People's Solidarity Committee ever since. In 2001, she published the groundbreaking book, Overturning the Culture of Violence, which, under the leadership of Chairman Omali Yeshitela, detailed the complicity and participation of white people in the historical assaults and colonial violence against African and other oppressed peoples. Uhuru Chairwoman Penny, I will turn it over to you to welcome our other special guest. So, Uhuru.
Brendan, thank you so much for opening up this event. I'm very happy to be here tonight. And I want to welcome everybody to this nearly 50 years of white solidarity with Black Power, 49 years of the existence of the African People's Solidarity Committee, formed by Chairman Omali Yeshitela in 1976. And, just the historic nature, the importance of the formation of the African People's Solidarity Committee, first time and only time that an organization of white people has functioned at all and was formed under the leadership of the African Revolutionary Movement. And of course, I join in saluting you, Chairman Omali Yeshitela. It's really an honor to be under your leadership, to have you here. I also salute Deputy Chair Onizine Yeshitela and welcome you who are here tonight with us, and everybody who's here and everybody who's online. And I just want to salute you, Chairman, because you developed the science of revolution, the political theory of African internationalism, and that lets us see the world as it really is, not as we want it to be, not as we imagine that it is, but the world as it really is. And that, again, we're so honored to have you in this program tonight and to be able to talk to you more deeply about this. And Chairman, you have accomplished so many things that takes on the world. You are the only person who has made it your commitment to complete the African Revolution of the 1960s, to be able to give us the science to see the world, to create the African internationalism, and to to understand and put out to the world that the struggle of white people is under the leadership of the African Revolution. This whole question of parasitism, this understanding that we can see in the world today so clearly, that the drivers of history are African and colonized people. That is what is driving this period forward, and that this is a powerful period that we live in. It's a very serious period, as you've said, that it's clear, that the whole question is colonialism, the colonial mode of production, and how important that is for white people to understand that colonialism is not a policy. It's not something that is of a certain period and now it's over. And that it's basically the DNA of the system that we live in, and what you call the colonial mode of production, that everything that we have and experience in this society is based on the reality of sitting on the pedestal of the oppression of African and indigenous and colonized peoples, and the enslavement, the assault on Africa, as you've taught us, the enslavement of African people, and genocide of the indigenous peoples, and the colonial domination of the people on the planet Earth. So, the formation of the African People's Solidarity Committee is it forwards the strategy for African revolution, and it's part of solving the problems of the revolution, like what you always said, like, well, what do you do about the white people? How do African people deal with that? Also, I want to say that, as you have said, Chairman, it is the goal of all of us, including Solidarity Forces, white people, to build the party, to forward the African People's Socialist Party. That is our leadership. That is what is the leading force in the world today. And that, we want to call on people to understand and be part of and join the African People's Solidarity Committee. Make this commitment when we see the struggles on every front in occupied Palestine, in the struggle of the Mexican people, the US government sending troops into Mexican communities, just taking over and coming into African communities, and Washington, D.C., and, all of the contradictions that we see, as many, so many sort of things that have been kind of taken for granted in the world under this period are being dismantled by the current administration. And we're clearly, which is a good thing, I guess, it's a good thing. And we're going to be seeing, the place, as you said, this opens up the opportunity for African and colonized people to jump in. I also want to say that the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations is going to be this coming weekend in Washington, D.C. And the slogan is "Don't Mourn, Organize." And I just really want to call on everybody here: don't mourn, organize. This is this is where we have to go. And and to say that what distinguishes the African People's Solidarity Committee from any other organization is, under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party, and a cadre organization. And what that means is that there are mass organizations that you can be part of. And for the Solidarity Movement, there's the Huru Solidarity Movement, an amazing mass organization led by Comrade Jesse Neville and Amanda, who are here tonight. But to be a cadre organization is to say, we will be here. We will be part of the struggle to change the world, to say that whatever is needed, we will be here to take this on. We will be part of solving the problems. of the African Revolution under the leadership of the party. So, yeah, so I want to call on people to, everybody here to really, everybody, all North Americans, all white people to be part of joining the African People's Solidarity Committee to really, really understand the importance of it, the leadership that we take, and we have a responsibility to take to bring the demand for reparations, make it real in the white community, to win other white people to stand in genuine solidarity with the African liberation movement as our genuine interests. So, Chairman, I wanted to ask you some questions and have a discussion with you tonight. And so I just really want to welcome you. Thank you so much for being here. And one of the things that you have said recently that I think sums up this period is that there is a shrinking ideological space for the colonizer, but the growth of the space for the colonized. And as you said, this is an extraordinary time in history. So that's a very powerful thing. And I wanted to start by today in the New York Times, there was an article on the effects of the Opium War on China, which was, very, and it was saying, in the relationship of Xi Jinping to the US government. And it reminded me of the founding conference of APSC when you read the quote from Karl Marx, and it was so exciting. You were actually reading it and talking about it. And you were saying, you read this, you plucked out of Karl Marx's many hundreds of pages of Capital, the book Capital, and you read this quote: "The discovery of gold and silver in America, the extirpation, enslavement, and entombment in mines of the Aboriginal population, the beginning of the conquest and looting of the East Indies, the turning of Africa into the warren for the commercial hunting of black skins, signalizes the rosy dawn of the era of capitalist production. These idyllic proceedings are the chief momenta of primitive accumulation. On their heels treads the commercial war of the European nations with the globe for a theater. It begins with the revolt of the Netherlands from Spain, which was over the question of who would own African people and the trade in African people. It assumes giant dimensions in England's anti-Jacobin War, and it is going on in the Opium Wars against China, etc. So, Chairman, I just, you recognize the significance of this quote, and and you both saluted and made a critique of Marx, because you pointed this out. This was his statement, but you said that only African people and colonized people could truly take this quote and bring it to the reality of it being the main understanding that this system is parasitic, and what it takes for the leadership of colonized people to be able to overturn this very system. So I just wanted to ask you to say something about that.
Well, first, I want to really appreciate this momentous occasion. We're talking about nearly 50 years of existence for the African People's Solidarity Committee. And that's no small thing. And I'm so happy to see, even here in this room and associated with this process, obviously some incredible forces who can be identified as cadre, but veterans who've been around for a long time, and who have a remarkable history. And while opportunism is something that's always we're always having to combat today, and I could even name organizations and personalities for whom that label is appropriate. But then, when we founded the African People's Solidarity Committee, it was extraordinary. It was intense, the opportunism.
Right.
And so I want to appreciate everyone who is here, especially the veterans, and especially your comrade Penny. I can't overstate the significance of the work that you've done all these years, and the very principled and honest participation that that you brought with you and helped to bring all these other comrades here and various other places around the world. You set the example, the template, if you will, for what it is to do this work. I think that Marx's quote that we use here is really important. And I want to remind people that what Marx is doing now is talking about the emergence of capitalism. Because the question had to be asked, where does it come from? Anybody who wants to start the smallest business, a barber shop or a barbecue stand or whatever, recognizes that you have to have startup capital. And for this enterprise that is the United States, the question is, where does the startup capital come from? Well, Marx had put forth a formula for the development of human society. And I think it's important for us to say his was the formula for the development of human society, not European society, but human society. And this process of development had a sort of stair-step movement from the lower to the higher, moving from his perspective, from what he characterized as primitive communism. I think it's really important to me. I've always been struck by this primitive communism.
Right.
At a time where he says, there was no oppression of women, there was no exploitation of anybody, and the working classes, we've come to know it, didn't even exist. It was a different kind of, it was a mode of production that was different. And it was characterized by equality and what have you. And then he said, it has been said that there was a movement from this a process of this mode of production of a primitive communism to, and sometimes people refer to as primitive communalism, but it's primitive communism that he's talking about. And from there, from the contradictions that emerge within this mode of production is born another. And this other mode of production that pushes out of significance, certainly of critical significance, this primitive communism is slavery. By slavery, we're not talking about the thing that was imposed on Africa and the indigenous people here in various other places around the world by Europe and Europeans. He's talking about stuff that happened with Romans and anybody. I think they've even reinvented the Spartacus kind of movie that they're showing on a regular basis now. And Spartacus was somebody who led significant slave rebellions against Rome. So he's talking about that. This is, and even the term slave comes from Slav, which, I don't know, can you characterize as an ethnic group or people who come from, certain regions in Europe? They were characterized at one point as Yugoslavian and Czechoslovakian and, even Russians. So this is what he was talking about, this slavery. And then the contradictions of slavery were numerous because there was no incentive for anybody to do anything. Under slavery, it was this was during an era of a feudal mode of production. This was during a time in which lasted for nearly 1,000 years, and where most of Europe lived in a state of near slavery, poverty, extreme poverty, stuff such as what it would be very difficult to imagine, to the point that it's literally true that some people during the era of feudalism had no clothing to wear. I mean, just naked. Isn't there some kind of reality thing they call naked to the world or something like that? But
Yeah.
yeah, so feudalism was like that. And if you go back to period in the 1300s, and it's really remarkable to me, is that I've read, this is of course during the time frame of the Black Plague, as they called it. In this instance, what they're talking about is a disease that afflicted Europe and other parts of the world, but something like half of the population of Europe died from this plague. It was a very serious kind of thing, and it was so bad. I have read that in the 1300s, that in England, what we now know as England, people were actually eating their cats and dogs and bird fecal matter, and on occasion their babies. So this is the civilized Europe. This is the Europe that set out to rescue, that to spread this abundance of civilization and what have you, that they were supposed to have. And so you had this feudal mode of production, and then out of the feudal, this feudal mode of production, where people, unlike in slavery, where the slave owners took everything that was earned, that was created by the enslaved people. Under the feudal mode of production, the lords, and this is how many of them were characterized as lords. I mean, even the biblical, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, has its origin during this feudal period. The Lord was the a person who owned the land, the landlord. We talk about the landlord, the person to whom you pay rent. It has its origin during this time. So this was a time where, unlike during slavery, where the ruling class, which was again the owners of human beings, took everything that was produced by the enslaved. Under feudalism, the ruling class, the lords and what have you, only took a portion of what was created. And so you've seen, probably they still, I think, show it. You can see like movies like Robin Hood, you know, where you have a situation where he would sometimes be the only employed person in the community, and his job, he was robbing the rich and giving to the poor, and built this army of forces in Sherwood Forest who would fight, you know, against the bad sheriff and etc. So this was based on the poverty that people were experiencing during the feudal era, and the fact that resources were constantly being taken from the people and who barely had enough to exist with. And then so this very mysterious thing happens. Out of the feudal situation, there grows another mode of production that's called capitalism. But it's a mystery. It's a real interesting process that only gets explained after the fact. There's no de facto, there's no way that this explanation meaningfully precedes. I mean, we know that there's supposed to be this modes of production, according to Marx, that owe their existence to contradiction in the preceding mode of production. But what contradictions in the feudal society would give rise to this capitalist mode of production? And capitalism, of course, is the instance where the ones who own and control the means of production, that's the capitalists. The way that people produce life and what have you, whoever owns and controls that, that is the capitalist. And so how do we get to a situation like this? And so Marx solves that problem and by saying that it occurs uh, uh, through what is characterized as the primitive accumulation of capital. It is an accumulation of capital that does not have its origin in capitalist production. It doesn't start with capitalist production. In fact, which is you have capitalist accumulation, but you don't have capitalist production. So how does it get here? So we have to presuppose, he says, that there was an accumulation of capital that preceded the capitalist mode of production. And that he characterized as this primitive accumulation, that rather this primitive accumulation of capital. This is the startup from it. Then he says that when you look at turning Africa into a warren for the commercial hunting of black skins, he talks about what was happening to India, as he characterized at that time, East India, the brutal expropriation of value and things from India. He talks about the attack on the indigenous people in the Americas, the Aborigines, if you will. So this is the primitive accumulation of capital. Now, that's extremely problematic because what Marx has just described is Europe and Europeans as the subjects of history, and the rest of us are pure objects of history whose only function in history was to provide for the development of Europe, because that's when you find the birth of Europe through the whole process of colonialism. There was no such thing as Europe preceding slavery, the enslavement of African people in this instance, and the development of the colonial project, the colonial mode of production. That's why we say this is a colonial mode of production. Marx characterized as the capitalist mode of production, but he's already, the information he's given us helps us to understand that it's a colonial mode of production. And it is something that is global. It's not just in England. In fact, it brings all of Europe together. It is the process that gave rise to what we call the Americas today. There was no Americas at this time. And so that's part of what we are talking about, and which is really, 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 I think, important. And it brings us to this moment in history, because what has been most difficult for Europeans, wherever they're located, has been the recognition of the role played by Africans and others in their development. They would have it bass-ackwards. They would have it the other way around. They would have it Rudyard Kipling style, that somehow Europeans enslaved the rest of us because it was the white man's burden. They didn't want to do it. They really, but it was their burden to spread the surplus of civilization and Christianity that they had. That's bass-ackwards, it's quite the other way around. And if you go back to 1300s, perhaps it was 1328 or sometime around that time frame, when British were eating cats and babies. You had Mansa Musa, who was an African, has been described even up to today as the richest person in the world, who traveled from Mali with an entourage of something like 60,000 people. Excuse me, he was stopping in different places and giving away gold, building mosques and other kinds of things like that. And to the extent that he wrecked the economy, I think it was Egypt, because of the amount of gold that he gave away there. So this gives lie to the whole notion, and which is the only reason we're having this, a primary reason we're having this discussion of the Europe spreading civilization to the world. What Europe spread to the world was poverty, war, ignorance, profound ignorance, and sometimes that's hard to understand because people. I've been in conversations with Africans who were militants and even had revolutionary postures. And when I've criticized Europe in a certain way, and I've heard the response, well, Europe they did do some good things because they built some schools or some universities, some clinics, here. And that's a profound insult. Listen, I have read, there's a book by Jose Jaffe, A History of Africa, who quotes important historians in Africa, and they say that during this dark era of European assault on Africa, at a time where there was something like 600 million people in Africa at the time, it was a lot of people, and Europeans during this process of capturing, enslaving, and etc., killed 200 million people. 200, that's a third of the African population was murdered in the process of bringing, this idyllic, as Marx said, capitalism into existence. So, and a problem is that because Europe is new, as I said, up until the 1600s, there was no such thing as Europe. I mean, some people recognize Christendom that sort of achieved an identity because of the war that it was initiated against the Muslims, Islam, looking for the Holy Grail, as they called it. And they didn't seem to find that, but if they looted, they found a lot of gold and other stuff that they stole. And so, and by the way, that has been such a significant occasion that Muslims, even to this day, remember, and there's a festering resentment based on that assault that attributes for a lot of people contributes to the poverty and despair that Muslims enjoy today. Of course, that's not an absolutely accurate assessment, but it's part of an assessment. So did I respond appropriately? Is there something else I need to talk about?
Well, I mean, there are more things I want to ask you, Chairman, but I mean, thank you for that. And I do think that I just want to say that for myself, when, joining APSC way back, in the day, and hearing your analysis, seeing the African People's Socialist Party, and beginning to see, begin to be able to open my eyes to the world as it really is. And I think that's something that other comrades in APSC and in the Solidarity movement really experience, just this kind of awakening. And I think that the, sort of deep in that awakening is the realization that this, that we're raised to believe that this is the highest civilization and all of these lies, and peace, and that white people want peace, and yet when we look at the reality, it's the most vicious brutality and violence.
But I do believe that it's peace that's desired. But it's peace on the plantation. It's peace. There's a peace. Peace between warring contenders, colonial contenders for resources, like mafia. Every now and then, if they make a deal and they don't like the way the deal works out, and so they go to war with each other.
Right.
And that's what we see in terms of these wars that's been characterized as world wars and things like that. And even if you look at the League of Nations and the United Nations, they were created with peace as central to how they define themselves, and they do want peace. The League of Nations, for example, was created in 1919 following the First Imperial World War. The mechanized, the extraordinary scientific murder, killing, slaughter of so many human beings was something that even the consciousness of many Europeans recoiled at. And so they don't want this to happen anymore. So how do you keep it from happening? Well, the reason it started in the first place is because contention between sectors of the colonial powers for control of the resource. They want a new deal, if you will. And I think it's worth mentioning that several things happened around that time frame of 1919. I mean, Marcus Garvey,
Right.
was a critical force at this time. That's what the struggle, even with Sandino in Nicaragua, who was rising up, against the U.S. that had a serious presence there. And in fact, if I remember correctly, it was against the Sandino's forces and against Oklahoma. What is the so-called Black Wall Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma? That the first area of military bombardments happened in the world happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and in Nicaragua. And these were peoples, and here is when was the uprisings? When was the vicious struggle? Red Summer, where so many people were. This is the thing that really drove this whole anti-colonial struggle of the peoples around the world is what gave significance to what came to be known to the Russian Revolution. And the thing that made Russia so significant is, think about this. You're talking about the Balfour Declaration, which is where England gave Palestine to the white people. You're talking about the Pitts, what's it called? Pitts, say it again. Sykes-Picot agreement that they had made to split up, to create what we now know as the Middle East. Most of the territories there were agreed upon by the Sykes-Picot deal. And this was something they were doing because they intended to take over the falling Ottoman Empire. And it was Leon Trotsky, after the Russian Revolution, who was able to expose that was going on. So you had all that stuff happening at the same time in the world. And so it was a real crucial moment in history. And it was the struggles of the peoples that gave rise, because the thing with the Bolsheviks that was so important is because Lenin and the Bolsheviks refused to participate in the war. And this was a disaster as far as some of the colonizers were concerned. And many even of the Russian communists were concerned about that. There was a whole debate, and Lenin pulled out of the war. And so this is the thing and this is a war to redivide the world. And so Lenin's not going to participate. And so objectively, whatever his other intentions were, he colluded with or contributed to the anti-colonial movement. There was an anti-colonial struggle that gave rise to the Bolshevik Revolution. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, I think that, and you have been saying that the Bolshevik Revolution happened based on the struggles of African people and colonized peoples around the world. That is what gave, impetus to that. But Chairman, yes, just one thing that I wanted to ask you about, you refer to the fact that white people see themselves or experience the world as the subjects of history, while African people and oppressed peoples are the objects of history. But that is, that is changing. That is changing based on the struggles of the colonized. Could you say something about that?
Yeah, and that's part of what we talk about when we look at the shrinking ideological space among the colonizers. I mean, think about it. You have a situation where now it's very difficult for the colonizers to come up with a rational explanation for why they should dominate the world. increasingly, they're saying because we got more guns, and they are even shredding what is supposed to be like basic foundational belief systems. It's extraordinary to behold this because it's like it's a system that cannibalizes itself. In the 1960s, what was really significant, in particular the 60s, happened before the 60s too, because that's why the United States decided in other places, they made these laws like these registration, foreign agent registration acts and stuff like that, because of the influence that frightened them of particularly of revolutionary forces, anti-sedition, revolution happening in various places around the world. 1950s, the whole McCarthy era, crush it, shut the whole thing down. That's what they would do. They would crush on their own rights. You're talking about fascism and things like that. McCarthy was characterized as a proto-fascist, et cetera. And so you had this kind of activity, this crisis in the social system itself. And there was a point that you had raised with me that I was attempting to respond to, but I think I was talking to Comrade Jesse, who told me about a book that was written by a man named Arthur Conoy, who was sort of civil rights lawyer, civil libertarian, somebody I knew, and a leftist of some sort. And he was talking about how the left, all the white left, they went underground, they cut their hair and started, behaving themselves, and of course some were killed. There was nothing to play with. I mean, they executed the Luxembourgs, the Rosenbergs, yeah, but there's Luxembourg too in Germany, yeah. Rosa, and but we had, and so he said that as a lawyer, he got a phone call from the incredible Ella Baker. And Ella Baker didn't call him to stop fascism. She called him to participate in dealing with what was characterized as the civil rights movement. And that's the struggle against colonialism, as it manifested itself then. And it was the struggle against colonialism that is responsible for protecting any democracy and projecting democracy, developing democracy inside the United States. How would that democracy look? And it was democracy, even by our definition. In this instance, I mean the African People's Socialist Party and Hula movement, who say that for colonized people, democracy is actually the elimination of the colonial state, or in our lives, or affecting, minimizing. That's the whole process of democracy. It minimizes the colonial state. And so you had, all kinds of horrible things happening to African people at this time that was not characterized as part of the fascism that we are talking about. Black people were on our own, more or less. And so it makes the point that I was, getting at. And then even if you look at this thing, what was it, No King's Day? And because this is the struggle they are making with the current U.S. administration. No King's Day. And this stems from the whole thing about feudal, the whole kings and stuff that the white people were running from when they came to the United States, and they stole this land, and they were fighting for the freedom to oppress indigenous and African people. Ultimately, that's what it was, and to steal the Mexican land, etc. But I was in a interview yesterday. I think it was, and this woman, this interviewer, Katie Halper, showed this video of the No King's Day demonstration, and then people, they confronted people who used this to try to hold up Palestine, to deal with the Palestine question. And this woman was extraordinarily incensed that they would interfere with the No King's Day thing and bring up the Palestine question, because how this is going to detract from everything that we're trying to do. People are going to, and of course, that's because the Palestine question is a part of the colonial question. Right. And it rests upon the whole foundation. And the No King's Day, again, was part, part of a project to create what's characterized as democracy here, and that is the freedom to oppress other people and oppress Africans. And even if you look at, certain terminology like free trade, all of this stuff comes about is because the white people, the colonizers here, as part of their struggle against England, and fought for, I say England, but it was not just England. It was the colonial powers at the time. They wanted to participate in the selling of African people, and it was something that was monopolized by the royal shipping lines, royal shipping companies. And so this became a struggle for freedom, free trade, we too want the right to sell Black people. Yeah. And this was prohibited, anyway.
I mean, I think that's really important. And by the way, I did see the Katie Helper. That was great, Chairman. That was a great interview. I thought you were very, very dynamic, and all of the people were responding, in the chat to your.
May I make one other point? Yes. Hopefully it contributes to where you see what is happening. That's creating a really frantic kind of response by the colonizers today. Because I'm not stooping to the thing of saying Trump. It's the colonizers. Right. 57% of the white people in this country voted for Trump. And every time he has run for office, 57% of the people who voted, white. But what is really pushing that is the fact that there's the growing demographic change in this country and much of the world. And it's really interesting because I'm looking at a book, and this is a book called Foreign Affairs. It's a journal. It's a journal of the thinking representatives of the ruling class in this country. It was started by the Rockefellers some years ago, the Rockefellers and the Trilateral Commission, which still exists, by the way. It's not something that is dormant. And they were talking about, one, the growing political violence. For them, the growing political violence was something that was signified by, I guess, shooting at Trump and other kinds of, stuff that's happening on the scene. This was written in January 2024, so it wasn't about the most recent things that has sparked the interest and what have you of the colonizers, this Utah killing. By saying that, they made the point, absolutely correct, point that we made at different times, is that you see growing political violence when the people no longer have confidence in the state, in the institutions, that they feel like it's either too corrupt, too crooked, it doesn't represent their interest anymore. In fact, we used to talk about that. Like I used as an example many years ago, some of you may remember it, that this man who had two beautiful cherubic little blonde children. Everybody thought they were just magnificent and beautiful, and they got in some kind of struggle over, these toys. There's some kind of what is it, range? Some kind of toys. What's it again?
Power Rangers.
Yeah, maybe Power Rangers.
Okay.
And so the father went and got a hatchet and he just hacked them up.
Mhm.
And I mean, we used to see all the time, you know, if there were, you know, people stop divorce. I mean, people drive off the damn docks with the children in them, and people
Right.
begin to do things. Why go to a divorce? It's easier to get a shotgun. You know, I mean, this is the kind of stuff that was happening.
Yeah.
And now the people, this regime, this current administration was given birth by the lack of confidence people had in this system, in the process, and the current administration posed as an anti-system person and put down a little political line that was convincing to a lot of people. That's why they voted for him. That's one aspect of it. But they said that a real fundamental part of the political violence is also driven by the change in demographics in this country. And what you have to remember is the United States is a settler colony.
Mhm.
It has no history. I mean, the white people who are here, who call themselves an American, have no history if they don't have America. It's a settler colony. And so the demographic changes. The promise is, I think by 2035, white people will be something like maybe 48%. And by 2045, that white people will be a minority in this country. And we've seen this. You've seen the white people marching in the streets, you shall not replace us.
Mhm.
And this has been given to us as some kind of extreme, you know, redneck kind of action that's happening. But we've seen also in the Munich Security Conferences that happens annually, 2020, one of the main features of that discussion was the possibility, probability of restlessness.
Mhm.
And by restlessness, they were talking about all the places where white colonizers exist. They included New Zealand, Australia, Canada, America, Europe, and the rest of that. So this is a problem. So it feeds into it. It contributes to policies like immigration policies,
Mhm.
kicking Mexicans and others out of the country, sending troops,
Mhm.
sending military troops to the borders. It contributes to policies like prison as birth control measures for African people and things like that. And so it affects policy determinations, laws and stuff of a society of a colonial society trying to protect itself, a settler colonial society, because that's Palestine. Because if you have a situation where the settlers who claim the land, and that's why they will not permit they will never permit for Palestinians to return. Can't return
Right.
because then the settlers become a minority. And that becomes a very obvious, extreme kind of contradiction, which is why right now, what we see happening in Palestine with the brutal murder and the quiet that we see, generally speaking, from policymakers and things like that here in the United States and much of Europe. In fact, policymakers are creating laws to prohibit anybody from criticizing the murders of, of Palestine. It's really interesting because they say it's anti-Semitic if you do that. And by which it translates really into it's anti-European
Mhm.
to do that.
Right.
That's the literal translation because it don't mean Semites. I mean, the Arabs are Semites and what have you as well. So that's a political characterization that they've given that they make use of. So anyway, yeah.
Yes, Chairman. And one, I wanted to ask you too about, you have said that, and I really appreciate this. I want to ask you to say something about it. You have said that that fascism is an anomaly, but colonialism is normal. It's the norm.
Yeah.
Would you say something about
Yeah.
that? I think it's so important.
Yeah, it is important but it's easier to understand if people are able to remember that colonialism is the foundation for capitalism, for what people like to refer to as liberal democracy and stuff like that. It has its origin there in the theft of land and resources, genius of the peoples of the world. And this is the liberal democracy that has been created, ruled by law, and like they like to brag about. And but if you recognize that capitalism itself was born of enslaving millions and millions of people and killing millions more. I mean, listen, I mean, I know we recognize some things about the US, but if you look at all of this hemisphere, if you look at, if you look at Cuba, Venezuela, all these territories, you're talking about created through the entire enslavement and colonization of Africans, people in particular. If you look at where all these struggles are happening, whether it's Afghanistan, whether it's in other areas that's characterized as the Middle East, it's the foundation. This is the foundation of the whole damn social system. So, yeah, so I just think that what was the point that you were raising, comment?
Well, the question of fascism versus.
Yeah, so if you understand all of this, then what you see is what's normal for the rest of us is what gave birth to this democracy that we're talking about. That's why we say that our struggle is a struggle against colonial democracy for anti-colonial democracy. And this thing that they call fascism is the moment when there is an intrusion into the normal democratic society, if you will, of colonizers, the parts of the what happens to the rest of us, colonized Africans and other people around the world. And so that's what we mean, that it's this thing that they're talking about is an anomaly. It's something that only happens with crisis, and in every instance, we can even go and look at where the crisis comes from. It happens with crisis in every instance, this thing that we call fascism. And but colonialism is with us all the time. It's not the brutality, the murder, the slander, the imprisonment. Why is it that people can say, wow, fascism is here or almost here? I mean, when you can look at the prison system right now and see all these Africans and Mexicans and people like that in prison, nobody say that was fascism. It becomes fascist when it intrudes into what is supposed to be the democratic norm that's experienced by colonizers. Yeah.
Yes, and that is so important.
Yeah.
That is really powerful. And also, of course, when, from the very first organizing conference that was building the African People's Solidarity Committee, you put out very clearly that the struggle is against colonialism, not racism. And you have written about that. You have taken that on, and we see. Well, first of all, I want to say that is incredibly important, and that is something that is penetrating into the world thought today, the world understanding, especially of colonized peoples, that the colonial question, that racism. Well, go ahead and say just talk about that a little bit.
I think that's right. I mean, because as you know, we've been saying, we've always said this. This is not a new thing. We've always said this. And there's a racism that the struggle against racism really promotes what it's supposed to be against. I mean, it puts white people in this incredible center. Everything revolves around white people. Do white people like me? Am I acting appropriate for white people? It even has become a definition of civilization, how how white people define us. Even if I mentioned the League of Nations and what have you, that also was supposed to be something that was for self-determination, but it was for self-determination only for civilized people. So who determined who was civilized except the persons who were oppressing and keeping us from having self-determination? This whole notion of racism, is something that some time ago became difficult to defend this thing about racism, and it had been overturned more or less in the 1960s because people, even sometimes people would say we're fighting against racism and imperialism or racism and colonialism. That's they were more and more understanding the whole colonial question, and the defeat of the Black Revolution of the 60s is what contributed to this fascination with anti-racism. And because you talk about anti-racism, it's a validation of the system of oppression and exploitation. It validates the system. If the only thing that we're about is to get it not to be racist or something, whatever the hell that means, then the system is okay. I mean, we're begging to be in the system. We demonstrating to please let us in the system. And we know you just bombed the 4 little children in Birmingham. We know you just did all these other, but please, can we move next door to the killers? I mean, this is the most ridiculous kind of struggle you want to have because it did not speak to what the critical issue was, and that was the fact that our rights, our self-determination had been taken from us. Our agency had been robbed from us. And you can say, okay, there was the enslavement of African people and the formal ending of slavery. Did that result in African self-determination in this country? Even colonialism, it didn't result. I mean, in places in Africa where they characterize our enslavement as colonialism, the struggle against colonialism did not result in actual liberation of African people. And so anyway, this thing it was chasing a white ghost to talk about we're fighting against racism. And when you talk about colonialism, yeah, that's concrete. And everybody knows what it is. Concrete is to negate the authority of the colonizer, of the oppressor in your life. Mm-hmm. It is not getting the oppressor to like you. It is not trying to be like the oppressor. It is not like getting skin lighteners and hair straighteners and all those other things so that you can be accepted by the oppressor. It is total rejection of that. There's absolute rejection of this this foreign authority that has imposed itself on the lives of our people. Yeah. So.
Well, I mean, I think that, we've seen some recently, we were looking at a video of Ernesto Bustillos from Unión de Barrios speaking, and the influence that he acknowledges, to the leadership, your leadership in the understandings of the Mexican liberation movement. And you have said many times that African people are a critical part of the struggle of the Americas. And, I just think that's very powerful, and the influence that you have had on the worldwide struggle that is out there today. Palestinian, Mexican, indigenous, you have always been there, Filipino people. And can you say something about that, the relationships that?
Yeah, I think that's extremely important. And I also think it's important because in some ways it speaks to the significance of the solidarity movement. In the sense that many of the peoples who are fighting for freedom against the US imperialism, they look for ways to have support and approval by Americans. And and the Americans have the money, and the Americans have the connections. And this is how they end up influencing the politics and of colonized people. We remember the struggle that we just came out of. Well, we're still there with the Party of Socialism and Liberation and the Answer Coalition, who did a very opportunistic and very insidious attack on the African Liberation Movement, because there's the same event that we are going to this weekend, the Black People's March on the White House, which is an anti-colonial demonstration by African people. That this is the 17th time we've done it. And in every instance, we've also invited other peoples, and especially white people here, to support the struggle against African colonialism. And the white left and peace movement have never done it, have never done it. There may be 2 people who will come from the groups of 3 people, but there has never been a real support for that. And this year, was that a couple of years ago, wasn't it? Where it was going to be the most, it was going to be the biggest mobilization that we've ever done. It was clear. And what happened was, of course, on October 7th, when the Palestinian rose up in response to the occupation and the white nationalists set the state of Israel began murdering people all over the place. This organization that has influence, money influence, I understand they spent something like $7 million to build a mobilization on the same day at the same place. And posed it, put it in a situation where an impression would be created that there was a contest between Africans, the party, and the Palestinian people. When the truth is, of course, that the white left, I mean, when you talk about Palestine, in 1967, the so-called Six-Day War, was it Six-Day War? Yeah. And all of the white left abandoned Palestine. And they took their money from SNCC, because SNCC came out in support of Palestine. And so the Africans have always been there, always been there. Malcolm X was in Gaza in 1964. And so now they have become the champions of Palestinians in a way that contributes to an assumption of a contradiction between Palestinians and Africans. They bought buses. They got all kinds of buses. They bought buses and Palestinians and others from all around this country. And this is a certain kind of intervention. In fact, it's the basis for the creation. This kind of intervention was part of the reason, the rationale for an African People's Solidarity Committee. Because if you're going to be seeing you working for Africans, and this is what they would do, they're working for Africans on the one hand, but they dominate everything. It's their resources and et cetera, which is, that's not possible. What's the thing that made it, has made it historically, made the party historically capable of dealing with that is not only the tradition of self-reliance. We've always had that. I mean, we've always had that. But the fact is that we created a solidarity movement that understood its responsibility to be as a part of the self-criticism. Because, how the hell do white people, the leftists or any, get out of this thing without any kind of self-criticism for the treatment of African people that's benefited them? Right. I mean, the fact is that they've inherited our wealth, our resources, everything that we've created, so that's different now.
I mean, I feel like opportunism, that was a word one of the first words I learned.
Yeah.
in joining APSC, and a word I didn't know before that,
Yeah.
but just how all of the struggles that you have taken on, and with the white left, and with just exposing this, and it's been very powerful.
Well, I want to say, we've struggled with the white left, but it's never been like a racial thing. It's
Mhm.
been a political and ideological.
Yeah.
We're not having just struggle with them. I mean, we had fierce struggles with the Republic of New Africa, with this whole politic of New Africanism, fierce struggles with the All African People's Revolutionary Party and others. So that's part of what has shaped us and given our identity as a revolutionary organization. So it's the white question was extremely important. The colonial question is extremely important. Settlers, that's a reality, and that we're going to have to reintroduce this concept and understanding. Increasingly, we're seeing people
Yes.
write about settlers here,
Right.
settler colonialism, an introduction. This is a recent book, and some people are writing. This was in opposition to settler colonialism, but we see more and more people are writing in defense, open defense of settler colonialism. Yeah.
Well, I think, and also, Chairman, I wanted you to say something about, because it's so powerful that the party and party organizations exist on many, about at least half of the so-called countries of Africa, throughout the continent of Africa. The party is there, and just the rise of the African People's Socialist Party, the Uhuru movement, and African internationalism.
I wanted first, if I may, I'd just like to just touch on the fascism question.
Oh, good. Great.
Because I remember this quote from Amilcar Cabral, who talked about, and this quote can be found, about how, and they were fighting against the Portuguese. The Portuguese controlled Angola, Mozambique, Guinea, Bissau, etc. And Cabral was involved in this revolutionary struggle against Portuguese colonialism. And he said that Portuguese leftists were telling them that they should fight against Portuguese fascism instead. That if they fought against Portuguese fascism, then Portuguese colonialism would collapse. And Cabral said, I don't know about that. He said, we oppose to fascism wherever it rears its head. But one thing we know for sure, if we crush Portuguese colonialism, fascism will collapse in Portugal. And something like a year or less after the victory in Guinea-Bissau, the fascism did collapse in Portugal.
Yeah.
When you talk about the struggle of fascism, I don't know why so many people are resistant to looking at the history. I mean, like the greatest fighters in Europe, allegedly, against fascism were the French. The French beret, the guerrillas, etc., fighting against German fascism. And what was it called? How did fascism represent itself in terms of the Vichy? Is that what I'm thinking of? Yeah, the Vichy regime. And yeah, so they achieved heroic stature. But at the same time, they were killing Vietnamese all over the place.
Right.
They occupied so much of Africa, yet these are the people who are fighting against. This is concrete. I'm not, this is not something that's, speculative or, abstract. This is how it looked in the real world. And we feel comfortable with our position that the contradiction is not fascism, it's colonialism and a colonial mode of production. It's a normalcy of the brutal oppression of Africans and colonized peoples around the world. It's a normalcy of the function of the colonial mode of production, which is parasitic, sucks the blood of most of the peoples around the world, and must necessarily, all the time, use extreme forms of violence in order to carry out its mission. And that's something that's with the rest of us. And it's so common, so ubiquitous that it does not excite people anymore. Sometimes it doesn't even excite those of us who are being victimized. So that's the thing that I think is important to say. Africa, we are moving in Africa. We concluded some time ago that the African liberation movement had run into its limitations when fought within the borders that were created by the colonizers. Whether those borders were here in the United States or separated us from Africans, other places, where those borders were on the continent of Africa, those borders did not exist before colonialism. And so we have been working. I mean, I think about how we have been working to put the party's presence in Africa. I traveled for many years, particularly in Europe, where there were large populations connected to Africa, unlike here. Here too, but in Europe, where you had European colonizers, French colonizers, Belgian colonizers, British colonizers, and what have you. And so you had Africans moving back and forth from those colonial territories. And that's still the case right now. So we would have these conferences in Europe and to build the African Socialist International. And we were influenced, and there may be an element of irony here, because they've attempted to put me and comrades Penny and Jesse in prison because they said we were working for the Russians. The Russians had hired us to do what it is that we do. But one of the things that influenced us to do the African Socialist International was our criticism of Soviet Russia, who had determined that there were only, six authentic African revolutionary organizations. The authentic six, they were characterized. And these groups, they would give money, weapons, trainings, et cetera. But these were groups that had the appropriate political line that met the interests of the Soviet Union. And there were other organizations who did not. And we found it was offensive for them to determine who was authentic and not authentic in the African Revolution, and that we can pull together ourselves as Africans and create an organization. We could train each other. We could raise resources for the struggle in Africa collectively. We can do that, even though Africans are generally poor, but we could pool resources where they needed to go strategically and et cetera. So that was the thing that influenced our movement, part of the influence for building the African Socialist International. And so, we've been doing that. And what's been critical, I think it may have been 2000, what year was it, Love, that we went to South Africa? Was that 2002?
2010? It was before that, yeah.
2002, something like that, I think. And worked a lot with the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania, or the youth wing. We did that because we were close to the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania, PAC. Early on, always had problems with the ANC that had just given away African resources to settlers there, et cetera. And so by 2002, the PAC had gotten a new Secretary General. And I guess he knew something about the history of this relationship, and he invited me to come there and to make the
It was really powerful.
the basic speech, keynote presentation at the 8th Congress, and I did, and it was extraordinarily impactful there. But Chimurenga had been. When did he go to South Africa? When was
2001.
2001?
Yeah, right.
Durban.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chimurenga built the first party organization in South Africa during the Durban conference there. And so, we worked that and in and out of that, and but finally now, this extraordinary group of young people. Of course, early on, Comrade Louise de Kinshasa, who's a very brilliant person, as you probably know, who was Secretary General of the African Socialist International. He would travel with us all the different places and went with us to Africa, and he played a major role in consolidating those Africans in South Africa. But they were young Africans, they were enthusiastic, and they still are.
Yes.
And they're brilliant. They believe in self-reliance, self-determination. They have created Black Power blueprint institutions there that they initiated on their own, and so, we in various provinces in South Africa, we are in Nigeria, we are in Namibia, we are in Ghana minimally, we are in Sierra Leone, we are in Liberia, and there are other places that we are there, and sometimes we're not there. Like, for example, our presence in some places is not constant. We've had an impact and still do in places like Sweden, in places like Holland,
France,
Belgium, France, Germany, etc. And sometimes we are there and with a significant formation, and sometimes not. Just people who are supporters in France, Spain, even. Yeah, Spain even.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Well, Chairman, I'm getting a note here that we have to go to the Q&A section.
Oh, okay.
But this has been,
All right.
this has been really profound, Chairman, and I'm very excited that we've been able to talk to you and just on this whole range of the world and the world as it is, and the struggle of African people and the significance of it. So I want to thank you, but don't go, because we're just going to have a little bit of Q&A, and I think that Comrade Brendan is going to come up.
So Brendan is coming. It's taking this seat.
I'm gonna take this little corner of our humble stage here.
Okay.
Uhuru.
Let's go, Brendan.
Uhuru, let's give it up one more time for Chairman. Thank you so much, Chairman Penny, and
Brendan.
Chairman. Yes.
May I just want to interrupt you just momentarily and celebrate my dear comrade, Onezune Ishitela, who, makes so much of this possible and who has kept me alive, literally over the last, I almost said just during this period that I've gone through with surgery and stuff like that. It's probably been true for much, much a longer period than that, but.
I definitely want to second that salute. So really incredible leadership, from Deputy Chair. We will be going to the Q&A here shortly. I do want to remind everyone, please submit your questions in the Zoom Q&A feature or in the YouTube or Facebook chat. But before we get to that, I want to take a few minutes to tell you how you can get involved in solidarity with African people's struggle for liberation and support this important work. So the most important thing we can do to stand with all oppressed people is to join under the leadership of the African Revolution, and that is what APSC was created to do. And tonight we have a goal to raise at least $500 for this, beautiful building that we're in today, the Uhuru Solidarity Center in St. Louis. So please go to apscuhuru.org/donate. And I do want to remind everyone before we get into the appeal that we have Sandy, who will be coming on in just a little bit to talk about the important case that's happening with Black Power 96. And I do want to go ahead and announce that people have been contributing tonight, and we have raised $400 so far of our $500 goal. So $100 remaining. I want to thank Lisa in Minneapolis, as well as Leah in Minneapolis, Ali and Maureen here in St. Louis, Becky also in Minneapolis, and of course MQ in Florida. So shout out to MQ.
Thank you.
And I just want to say I am going to be donating $50. So 49 of that for the 49-year anniversary, and then another $1 for the incredible year that APSC is going to have. So I urge everybody who's watching now or in the recording later to join me in that.
Well, I'm going to join you in that.
Heck yeah. Okay, so that's 450. Mine was already included in that. So we are one more person joining us away, and there's no reason to stop there. So the funds that we raise, these funds that we're raising tonight, and in all of these APSC events, go to the expenses of this center, the Uhuru Solidarity Center in St. Louis, which is owned by the African People's Socialist Party, that we in APSC are responsible to develop and promote as we build the movement for white people's reparations to the African community of St. Louis and beyond. It is the headquarters for the African People's Solidarity Committee in the US and around the world, as well as for the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. And a little bit of history here. The African People's Solidarity Committee is unique in that it is a strategic front of the African liberation movement behind enemy lines. We work in the white community, and we are led by the African People's Socialist Party, who founded this organization in 1976. The mass organization of APSC is the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, with members in 130 cities in the US and Canada. Next slide. APSC is a cadre organization, meaning we adhere to African internationalism, the worldview of the African People's Socialist Party, which is a worldview to change the world, not just analyze it. This is a theory that demands practice. And what we've been talking about, what this, what these funds are going towards tonight. This is the national headquarters of APSC and the Uhuru Solidarity Movement in St. Louis, the Uhuru Solidarity Center at 2654 Gravois Avenue. So this is an important space from which we organize campaigns like the annual Days of Reparations campaign, which is wrapping up here in a few days, as well as teach-ins, outreach, actions, and all of the reparations work APSC and USM carry out. This is a photo from the March for Reparations held in St. Louis earlier this fall. Just an absolutely incredible event. Next slide. The main work of APSC and USM is reparations, returning stolen resources to the programs of the party, building political and economic power to the African working class, including the Black Power Blueprint and the Uhuru Houses, Uhuru Foods, Black Power 96 Radio, which we'll hear about in a little bit, as well as the Burning Spear newspaper, and so many more that we did not prepare enough time to get into. We are excited for the upcoming opening of the Uhuru Bakery and Cafe. Can we get a round of applause for that? Here in St. Louis, this is part of the Black Power Blueprint. This is a photo from last weekend when a bunch of volunteers showed up and came out to help paint this beautiful mural on the building. Next slide. Another critical front of all the work under the leadership of the party is the Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa campaign that is pushing back the state attacks on the African liberation movement and leading the struggle for anti-colonial free speech. Okay, and just a quick update. Did mine? There we go. Well, looks like they're still working on that. So the Uhuru Solidarity Center is a vital resource for people from the white community in St. Louis to come together to plan and organize events, as well as community outreach, fundraisers for reparations, and solidarity with the Black liberation movement. We want to call on you to contribute to the work of APSC and this center. Please go to apscuhuru.org/donate. You can make a one-time contribution or become a monthly sustainer, like Michael, Virginia, Leah, and so many others who give every month. And so the updated total, we are at $450 contributed, just $50 away from our goal tonight. And I do want to, shout out and thank everybody who
Well,
has.
I think we also have Ruby and Kitty. I don't think that was. I just saw that added here.
Maybe I'm not. Huh. So yeah, we are definitely.
Yeah, we're definitely
we've
over
beaten our
goal.
Okay, there we go. They're
Janice 25.
Mine's a little slow over here. So
Okay.
shout out to everybody who's contributed tonight: Lisa, Leah, Allie, Maureen, Becky, MQ, Chairwoman Penny, Janice, Ruby, Kitty. So yes, we are ahead of our goal. No reason to stop now. If you're watching a recording of this, that donate link is still good. So we are at $550 at the moment. And I think it is probably time that we move on to the next thing. But thank you for everybody who contributed. So we've reached our goal, and I do want to just put out there one other way that you can take action right now, and that is to join the African People's Solidarity Committee, which you can do by going to apscuhuru.org/join. Fill out the application. Someone from our membership office will contact you within 24 hours, and we can get you started on the new member process, which includes political education. So if you were liking the content in tonight's event, there is so much more of that, but also getting to work, contributing your skills and strengths to our mission of winning millions in reparations to the African liberation struggle, and building a massive movement of white solidarity with Black power under the leadership of the party. This is the time to bring all the resources stolen from African people for hundreds of years to the African Revolution. So join today. Go to apscuhuru.org/join. And I want to thank everybody again. And now it is time for another an important update. So I do want to welcome and bring up on Zoom Sandra Forrest, who is a member of APSC, and she's going to talk briefly about a struggle being waged by Black Power 96 Radio and the courts to defend anti-colonial free speech rights for everyone. Welcome, Sandy.
Uhuru, Sandy.
Uhuru, what a really, really great program. And I just want to join in saluting the chairman's decades of leadership and genius and courage, and just so grateful to have been able to learn from you and follow you for 43 years now. And also to salute Chairwoman Penny, who has fought to make the African People's Solidarity Committee raise up to what the party has called for, and what an example that you set for us. So yeah, I can't imagine living in this world today without the clarity that the chairman has provided, and without being able to know that I'm part of a real strategy that's making so many advances towards victory for African and all colonized peoples, and building a new world where no one lives at the expense of another, and everyone can enjoy peace and health and the full expression of creativity as human beings. So it is my great honor and pleasure to have been assigned by the party to contribute my time and experience to help build its media institutions under the leadership of Director Akile Anai, including Black Power 96 Radio in St. Petersburg, which is a part of the practical work of the party to build African self-governance. And so on this upcoming next Thursday, November 6th, Black Power 96's attorneys will present oral arguments in the 11th Circuit Court in Jacksonville, Florida. And we want to make sure everyone knows about this case and call on you to attend if you possibly can. So the radio station put together a short video, and salute to Comrade Dylan, who did the editing work to make this video possible. And it includes footage from the actual county commission meetings where the local officials had revealed their real reason for defunding Black Power 96 Radio because of its association with the Uhuru movement. And I'll just, tell you what you know. Black Power 96 is proud to be associated with the Uhuru movement and has a constitutional right to associate with whomever it chooses. And so that's why this fight is being taken into the colonial court. And it really is precedent setting in a similar way to what the Uhuru 3 case has been. And, it's so important that when from African People's Solidarity Committee, we say we building political and material support for the African liberation struggle. And so it's critical that we do defend the right of Black Power 96 to, in this fight against this unconstitutional defunding. So we have there's a video that really tells the story. So we're going to play that for you.
Black Power 96 is a small independent black community FM radio station in St. Petersburg, Florida. We are fighting a battle in federal court that if we win, we will set case law precedent to protect the First Amendment rights to freedom of speech and association for all media institutions and individuals against the threat of defunding by those in power who seek to eliminate dissent.
Every day in the news, we read about another big media company or educational institution bowing to pressure and throwing their principles out the window.
Black Power 96 Radio is a small station with big impact, and we refuse to abandon our mission. We are a project of the African People's Education and Defense Fund, the baddest nonprofit on the planet.
In 2022, Black Power 96 applied for federal money from the American Rescue Plan Act that was being administered by the local county government. The ARPA money was supposed to assist groups and projects that had been negatively impacted by the COVID pandemic. The station asked for $37,000 to make equipment purchases that had been canceled after revenue was lost during and after COVID.
Black Power 96 application was ranked 4th highest of 55 applicants.
In November of 2022, Pinellas County Commission voted to approve our application.
In January of 2023, APEDF received a contract for the grant, signed it, and returned it.
In February of 2023, a newly arrived Pinellas County Commissioner, Chris Letvala, challenged Black Power 96's grant award. He slandered the African People's Education and Defense Fund by falsely claiming that our nonprofit ran candidates for office, which we do not, and which would have lost us our nonprofit status. He falsely charged us with anti-Semitism and that our nonprofit was under FBI investigation, which we were not. He said that the county should never provide funding to the African People's Education and Defense Fund.
The African People's Education and Defense Fund received money for radio station equipment.
Yes.
Was that for Black Power 96 in St. Petersburg?
Yeah, I think that is for their radio station.
According to their website, and that's the website of the African People's Education and Defense Fund, they're associated with the Ruhus in St. Petersburg.
5 days later, the county voted to revoke Black Power 96's $37,000 grant.
Florida has sunshine laws requiring government officials to be transparent and do their business in public view.
Did the place already get the money?
No, they may try to sue over discrimination, which is why I focused on the radio station aspect the other day. The contract was literally sitting on the CEO's desk. I told staff after the workshop I was going to bring it back up to try to kill it. Don't publicize either of those things, please.
I will not.
The county did not notify the African People's Education and Defense Fund nor the public that a motion would be introduced to revoke Black Power 96 grants. They hid their shameful act in the last obscure agenda item buried underneath the title, County Commission New Business.
Okay, and number 24 is the County Commission New Business, pertinent timely committee boards, updates, and policy considerations. Let's start with Commissioner Lathala.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I actually have two items that
Okay.
I'd like to discuss. The first one is on Thursday, we talked about the ARPA funding, and I had some questions about that. And I would like to make a motion to revoke the funding for African People's Education and Defense Fund in the amount of $36,801 for a radio station, because I do not think that we should be funding radio stations with the amount of needs that there are in our community.
I second that.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Latvala and seconded by Commissioner Flowers, and now we open for discussion.
There was no public discussion. Just a unanimous vote to revoke Black Power 96 radio's funding.
At the following commission meeting, community members spoke out in support of the station.
I've grown up here and witnessed the gentrification of my city ever since I was in middle school. Walking around, I could see things being demolished right before my eyes. Black Power 96 has been serving the black community for over half a decade now, providing vital public service announcements, news, and culture. I'm thankful and fortunate to be offered an opportunity at the radio station. As a programmer, as a program engineer for Black Power 96. However, I'm not the first student to work at Black Power 96. A group of Gibbs High School students got their start there with a radio show called No Class. And now, my comrade Ikwan works for Nielsen Media Group, which is a radio company. He's made it big, and I want to be able to do the same and see the same thing in my community. Thank you.
I'm a resident of St. Petersburg, Florida, my whole life. I'm 52 years old. I was born and raised here. There's been nobody like Black Power 96 in this city ever. Nobody has done for the community what this station does.
My name is Akila Anai, born and raised in St. Petersburg, Florida, and I'm the Director of Media and Communications for the Uhuru Movement. I'm here today as an outraged citizen of Pinellas County because of the recent decision by this commission to revoke the ARPA grant funds previously awarded to the APF radio station WBPU LP 96.3 FM, or famously known as Black Power 96. This vote came days after a commission meeting where commissioners slandered the Uhuru Movement, making baseless claims and accusations. Latvala and Flowers spearheaded this attack, and the rest of the commission followed suit with the assertion that no organization affiliated with the Uhuru Movement should be considered for funding. The Uhuru Movement, founded and led by Omali Yeshitela, has served the historically oppressed and impoverished black community for over 5 decades, creating programs, institutions, and campaigns that defend the democratic rights of black people. This commission cannot say the same. When our people were in need of a community center, a health and wellness program, free HIV testing, youth sports and other recreation, cultural centers, educational institutions, the Uhuru Movement provided them. It has been this movement that has fought long and hard for genuine economic development and reparations to our community, something that at every turn the government has worked to intervene and put a stop to.
The county ignored them.
Then, in April of 2023, the Pinellas Community Foundation, who had been contracted by the county to evaluate grant applications, released their results for the second round of ARPA funding. They again ranked Black Power 96 fourth highest of 79 applicants and recommended granting the station $67,000 for a backup generator.
So on October 10, 2023, the African People's Education and Defense Fund filed suit in federal court, demanding restoration of all funding and charging Pinellas County with violating nonprofits' First Amendment rights to freedom of speech and freedom of association, as well with racial discrimination and denial of due process.
The county is spending vast sums of money on a high-powered private law firm to defend their unconstitutional acts. They filed a motion to dismiss with lies about the Uhuru Movement so egregious they were forced to strike and withdraw.
But a year later, Judge Barber dismissed the station's case.
This spring, the African People's Education and Defense Fund filed an appeal with the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals.
Oral arguments will be heard in this case in Jacksonville, Florida in the first week of November 2025.
The African People's Education and Defense Fund salutes the brilliant work of attorneys Luke Leroux and Rachel Ricks. When the cost of pursuing justice in this case became prohibitive for this small station, renowned First Amendment attorney Leroux offered to continue with the case pro bono, declaring it too important to drop.
Now, Black Power 96 is simply needing to raise funds for the actual case cost of filing, printing, and travel. To support this small station fighting this big battle on behalf of everyone's right to dissent and justice, you can make a tax-deductible donation at blackpower96.org/legalfund.
And join us in court this November in Jacksonville.
Because at Black Power 96, we're not just explaining the world, we're changing it.
Uhuru. Thank you so much for that, Sandy, and that really incredible video. Yeah, shout out to Dylan for that and everybody who spoke in it. And yeah, let's make sure we get that link in the chat, blackpower96.org/legalfund. Oh, and Sandy, did you have anything else to add to that? I see we've got.
Yeah, just wanted to say, oh, did I unmute?
You're good. You're good.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to say that, the Uhuru movement, like Director Keeley was talking about, is founded in St. Pete, and it is the only thing standing in the way of complete removal of the African community through aggressive gentrification and the assaults on the African community. And that's why these politicians don't want the radio station to succeed and grow. If the station wins in court, it's a win not only for Black Power 96, but for freedom of association and really setting federal case law precedent to benefit all of these institutions and organizations that are being threatened with defunding today. So it's just another instance of the African liberation struggle standing strong in the forefront, pushing back the attacks on the people's rights and keeping the democratic space open for everyone. And, we've been trying to get support from other community radio and media activists about this case, and we have gotten some, but not the real kind of solidarity and resources that should be offered. So, yeah, I just want to unite with the call to, we in the African People's Solidarity Committee and the Uhuru Solidarity Movement need to do what we can to spread the word about this case. The video that you just saw is up on Burning Spear TV YouTube channel, so please share that with your contacts. And this week, if you're on social media, you're going to see a series of shorts and infographics on the platforms of Burning Spear and Black Power 96, and really want to ask people to spread the word in any way you can about this case. And people are going from St. Pete, and so you can find your way to Jacksonville or support the ones who are. So thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Incredibly important, and I urge everyone to, definitely follow the Burning Spear on YouTube and keep up with the Burning Spear event page as well, so you can have these updates and you can share that video, incredible video, really just very, very damning texts and just awful look for the Pinellas County Commission. Okay. Oh, I do want to say also, we did get another new donation from Onizane Yeshitela of Uhuru. We are currently at $650. Yeah, beat our goal of keep going. And as we head into the Q&A, I do want to recognize where we've got people tuning in from, and I do want to thank our chat moderators for pulling this together. So Louisville, Kentucky, Newcastle, Pennsylvania, Minneapolis. I know we've got Comrade MQ in Florida. And we've got
Ohio.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. Columbus.
Ohio.
Yeah, Minneapolis, and of course the folks here in St. Louis at the center, as well as I know we've got some St. Louis comrades watching online as well. Uhuru. So we are going into our Q&A session. I do want to urge everyone if you got any burning questions for the chairman, now is the time. I do actually have one myself, if I may, and kind of a really directly related to this crisis of colonialism that we're seeing, and this colonial system constantly lashing out. I kind of want to ask about the escalation of aggression against Venezuela right now, and also the unity we're seeing from a lot of like Latin countries. Their political leadership, it seems to be rallying around Venezuela. I know the Colombian president has made some very strong statements and has actually had like tariffs added, and other political pressure being put on Colombia, as well as not Lula, but Brazil's MST leader came out with an incredible statement talking about how all of Latin America will unite around Venezuela, and until the last Navy soldier is sent home in a coffin or in a grave. So I just kind of wanted to ask about that and hear your thoughts on that escalation and then the unity we're seeing in Latin America.
Well, I think it's a very serious situation. What this administration has admitted publicly, has told the world that it has CIA agents in Venezuela with the intent of overthrowing the government. And this could be true. We know they've done things like try to impose their own president on the country, despite to replace Maduro, and actually have had troops at one juncture there at the Colombia-Venezuela border for the purpose of threatening Venezuela. Recently, we've seen them kill in the Caribbean area, in both Atlantic and the Pacific region. I think more than 40 people who they claim to have been drug smugglers, which is really extraordinary. I mean, to bomb people like they have done, and there's no trial, no court, nothing. They just bomb them, and then you have to take Donald Trump's word for why that happened. And so it's very serious. And I think, we talk about Venezuela, and I'm glad to see that there are some countries who are rallying behind Venezuela. It's interesting because the current president of Venezuela represents an organization that we worked with years and years ago before they came to power. In fact, I toured with that representative. What was her name? No,
Cristina Vasquez.
Cristina Vasquez, yeah. And the vice president, Colombia, is an African woman. It's an interesting kind of development of what Colombia is trying to do in terms of move forward. And so we're looking at that. Cuba, there's growing aggression against Cuba right now. People are actually starving in Cuba at this moment. And so that's kind of visible. Part of what's hidden is the aggression against Africans everywhere, but particularly inside this country, because while we can see Cuba, we can see Venezuela, we can see even Syria and other places where this aggression is directed, Palestine. There's a presumption that these are different countries. There's a presumption that these are different people. There's a presumption that there's an assault on their sovereignty as people, etc. But where you deal with Africans in this country, there's no such presumption. In fact, even as anyone who knows anything about this country, if they were truthful, would truthfully say that this is not our country, and but we get treated as if we were just ordinary Americans, and so therefore we are Americans who, and it's really bizarre when one thinks about it that somehow we have to reach this place where America solves its problems with race and et cetera, et cetera. But the problem with race is killing us, and it's got prisons filled with African people and children starving and threats and assaults on basic programs that supposedly takes care of African people. A point I would make is that what is happening now is lines are being drawn, and even if there are countries and leaders who want to kowtow and bow down to this government, that the people in these countries are offended mightily about what is happening. I mean, you just mentioned Brazil's stance on the one hand, but just now in Brazil, as you probably know, that I don't know how many, perhaps hundreds of mostly Africans have been killed in the favelas in what? Rio, yeah. And but I think that the line is being drawn, and increasingly countries and people are being forced to recognize that there is no way to reconcile their interests with the interests of colonialism. And I think that a weakness anywhere in this country as well is the absence of the kind of leadership that would struggle, that would help the people, the colonized people in particular, to come to terms with the fact that we have to be self-governing, as opposed to this, false assumption of being, Americans or something to that effect. And that's the work that we do, and that's the work that that is to say, struggling towards self-government, self-reliance. That's why we call it dual power. It's not just dual power, it's dual and contending power. Mm-hmm. Dual power is the presumption of how do they call it? Polarism. Mm-hmm. This is the presumption of us having control of our own lives. And I think that that's what we're going to see more and more of. So there's no way to say what they're going to do in Venezuela. They're moving warships and other kinds of things there. They're actually terrorizing the people there. It's a frightening specter to have these bombs, these boats being blown out of the water, people being destroyed, like that announcement that the United States government self-proclaimed greatest military power in the world, is trying to overthrow the government. All of this stuff is a form of psychological warfare. But I think that more and more people are being forced, whether they want to or not, know that we're going to have to be able to develop new relationships with ourselves, among other colonized people, and find ways outside of the systems that they have established to feed, clothe, and house ourselves. And I think you're going to see that happen. I know it's going to happen, because not everybody's just going to roll over and die. And we're going to see amazing and courageous responses from heroic peoples. Just think how long Vietnam fought by itself. So I think that's part of what we're looking at. So there's no way we can say there's a solution. Of course, if there are actions, popular actions, or even not popular actions, people should engage in. If that gives us a chance to monitor and or create support for Venezuela, wherever we are, in opposition to what this regime is doing. I think we should do that. Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman.
All right.
Trumpetti, did you want to?
Well, I really appreciate this program, and I thank you so much, Chairman, for being with us tonight. This has been really profound, and I just want to say that this is not, as we said, this is a theory of practice. You can't just watch this and just accept it or sit back and not do anything. This requires that we get out there and build the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, the African People's Solidarity Committee, to join the people on the planet Earth, make our self-criticism to African people, and to be part of this incredible forward motion of the oppressed, of African peoples on the planet Earth, to end the colonial system once and for all, and to build a world in which, without war, without injustice, in which all human beings can live, no one at the expense of anybody else. So
Absolutely.
this has been a powerful event. And just
let me say,
yes,
I think it's really important to recognize that we're not going to get a lot of people who are going to pack up and run to Venezuela and defend the ports and whatever else that's under assault there. There used to be a time in the 1960s in particular when people would commonly ask revolutionaries and sometimes states that might have come to power, revolutionary states, what can we do? And the response in most instances was, fight where you are.
Yeah.
And that's what has to happen. And the critical question in the United States is to raise up the colonial issue and parasitic colonialism. And because there's a sort of a tradition over the most recent period of just being protest movements. I mean, I know organizations, and I'm glad that protest happens, I guess, in most instances. But it's more than protests. We are about more than protests.
Yes.
And that's why you see all these institutions that represent what it is that we stand for. And, there used to be a slogan of people and groups who do that the movement is everything, but the revolution is nothing. And that's not our stance. We have to transform this relationship. We have to take power in the hands of our people. And there used to be some mystification about what was meant by Black power. And Black power means Black state power. And we have to be able to achieve that. And working in that will contribute to defending Venezuela.
Yeah.
And standing with the heroic sister people, Mexicans, the indigenous people in these damn concentration camps that they refer to as Indian reservations. That's the kind of stuff we need to find ways more and more to support these struggles, Uhuru.
And I do want to say we've got some announcements here as we're reaching the end of our program, and these are opportunities to do just that, do the work where you are. Uhuru. So first one, so coming up tomorrow, so Thursday, October 30th at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, join a teach-in hosted by the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. Fight for anti-colonial free speech, reparations now, solidarity with African, Mexican, and Palestinian liberation. So this will be in person at Panera Bread, 1908 4th Street, North 4th Street in St. Petersburg, Florida. as well as online at tinyurl.com/anti-colonial speech. Now the big one. So come to Washington, D.C. this weekend, November 1st and 2nd for the Black People's March on the White House. Buses are being organized from St. Louis, Chicago, and elsewhere. Get all the info for the Saturday mobilization and Sunday conference at blackisbackcoalition.org. Sign up tonight to volunteer with the Uhuru Pies holiday campaign in St. Louis, baking every Friday, as well as some upcoming pop-ups that you can see on there. Take a screenshot, or hopefully we can put some of those. Is that on the website, uhurupies.org? Excellent. Or call 314-334-8307. Okay, mark your calendar for the next APSC study scheduled for Wednesday, November 19th at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. We'll be reading and discussing the chairman's most recent political report. Register for the study at apscahuru.org/study. Subscribe to get the Burning Spear news and analysis sent to your email inbox. Visit theburningspear.substack.com. Check out the One Africa Worldview podcast on youtube.com/@theburningspear. They are live Mondays at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central, and you can catch up on past episodes as well. So in addition to all of these incredible online resources, we are an organization of organizers. We are on the ground doing outreach, talking with people face to face. So we call on all APSC and Uhuru Solidarity Movement members and supporters to read and distribute the best organizing tool we have, the Burning Spear newspaper. Now is the time to order bundles of the November issue. Go to theburningspear.store. And a reminder that you can find resources to support your spear distribution efforts at apscuhuru.org/spear toolkit. Uhuru Planet Reparations Apparel is clothing, accessories, and more that is forwarding the culture of white reparations to African people. It is an institution of Black Star Industries. You can go to the online store at uhuruplanet.com to check out the newest design that you can see right there on the bottom right. Kick the ass of the ruling class. Join the White Solidarity with Black Power digital media team. Be part of producing events like these, as well as the Reparations in Action podcast and more. Help these broadcasts reach a wider audience to bring African internationalist analysis to the masses of white people who want to stand in principled unity with colonized people. We need engineers, promotions, video editors, graphic designers, whatever skills you can offer. Drop a line in the chat or email volunteer@apscuhuru.org. So you can find details about these and more upcoming events at theburningspear.com/events. Uhuru, I want to thank everybody who donated. We did beat our goal, but you can continue donating. So if you're watching the recording later, can contribute as well. And make sure to visit uhurusolidarity.org and apscuhuru.org to learn more about the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, the African People's Solidarity Committee, and how you can become a member and join the work to build white solidarity with Black power and unity through reparations. Before we close out, I did want to ask our special guests tonight if they had any parting words for our audience.
Uhuru, Chairman.
Go ahead, Comrade.
Well, it's been an honor to have you here. This has been a powerful event. We have a lot to do. We have to go forward. And it's powerful to be on the winning side.
Yeah.
Just relentless.
That's right.
Uhuru. Yeah, I just remember, as many of you do here, especially veterans, the rocky road that we tread when we first created the Solidarity Movement. You know, bourgeois feminists, charging that they had issues with this because it was just white women white lesbians working under black men's leadership or black leadership or something like that. And we had Africans, and then we had revolutionaries, one of whom, revolutionary organization claimed that it would never work because somehow white workers would never work against their own interests in terms of under the leadership of African people. We had Africans who would, raise the question, a reasonable question about who struggle that you can't trust the white people, etc. And what we've done is we brought science to this movement, and we would tell them it's not a matter of trust. We don't trust them any more than we trust you. We trust our strategy. This is what we trust. This is something that we have the ability to prove and have proved, and continue to do that. So I just want to say that it's really been important for this organization to come into existence. And I just remember we look at July 29, 2022, when the government came to get me. But they couldn't be satisfied with just attacking me in North St. Louis, where the majority of Africans did. They also had to come here to South St. Louis and to arrest Penny and Jesse, and to put Jesse's wife and Penny's comrade hold them at gunpoint and things like that. And I remember how when they killed Malcolm X, there was no response from the white community. And when they killed, and even Martin Luther King, who they loved so much, there was no meaningful response, or pamphlets were being assassinated all over the place with no meaningful response. But we had a different place in history now. And we have been able to build a movement that penetrates into the North American community, because our resources are penetrated there, and our music and culture have penetrated there. And now we have a situation where our movement has penetrated there. And we used to be a movement that people used to be able to talk about the Black movement and the socialist movement or something to that effect. But where we are now is that we say that the road to socialism is painted black. And the colonial question is a critical question. We've taken that on, and we built a movement that not only deals with Africans, but settlers, if you will. We've built a movement through the Hands Off Uhuru. We've opened up a Latin American front with that. We're in various places in Africa, as Comrade Penny just mentioned. So it's an extraordinary period, and the solidarity front of our movement is just a really, really important component of that. So thank you, comrades, and thank everybody for being here. And send more money.
As we say, solidarity, reparations.